Hello, and welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Today we will talk about a tragic story that shook the community of Macon, Georgia. The case involves two promising young lives, Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena, whose futures were abruptly and brutally cut short. Grant Hendrickson was born on September 20th, 1972, in Macon, Georgia. Grant was an active member of his community. He enjoyed outdoor activities like fishing, golf, canoeing, and camping. He was also a volunteer at the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Macon from the age of 15. He was in his 5th year at Mercer University at the time of his death. Michele Cartagena was born on May 2, 1975 in Monterey, California. She was a gifted individual, a top singles tennis player, the leader of her school softball team, and a member of the National Honor Society. She also volunteered for the Red Cross Society and an animal welfare association. At the time of her death, she was in her 2nd year at Mercer University. Grant and Michele were not just academically inclined, they were also deeply in love. They had been dating for a little over a year and had already made plans for their future together, but their dreams were never realized. Let's delve into the story of what happened to this young couple. On the fateful night of January 2, 1995, Grant and Michele decided to spend their evening at Juliette Lake, a popular spot known for its serene beauty. The area was open to the public 24/7 and included a boat launching area, parking lot, small dock, and picnic tables. Their bodies were discovered the next morning by a passerby. The scene was chilling. Both Grant and Michele were found shot to death in their car. The car was parked near the lake, a place they had visited for a peaceful evening turned into a horrifying crime scene. The police were immediately alerted and arrived at the scene. The brutality of the crime was shocking, even to seasoned officers. The victims had been shot multiple times, and it was clear that the perpetrator had intended to kill. The crime scene investigators began their meticulous work. They collected bullet casings from the scene, which were later identified as likely being from an AR-15 rifle and a 9mm Ruger pistol. In a gruesome twist, saliva was found on Michelle's thigh. This was carefully collected for DNA analysis, a relatively new technique at the time. The investigation into the murders of Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena was a complex and challenging process. With no immediate leads or suspects, the police had to start from scratch. The initial stages of the investigation were fraught with difficulties. The crime scene yielded little information about the identity of the killer. The DNA sample from the saliva found on Michelle's body was a potential lead, but the DNA database was in its infancy at the time, making it difficult to find a match. The investigators began by interviewing family, friends, and acquaintances of the victims. They hoped to uncover any potential conflicts or threats that might lead them to a suspect. However, both Grant and Michele were well-liked and had no known enemies. They were described as kind, active in their community, and had no involvement in any illegal activities. The breakthrough in the case came when the investigators shifted their focus to the weapons used in the crime. They obtained a list of people who had purchased an AR-15 rifle from the largest gun store in Macon. One of the names on the list was Andrew Allen Cook. When contacted, Cook lied about the timeline of selling his rifle, arousing suspicion. Further investigation revealed that Cook had also sold a Ruger pistol and his Honda CRX car, which matched the description of a car seen near the crime scene. With these leads, the focus of the investigation narrowed down to Andrew Allen Cook. However, the police needed more concrete evidence to link him to the crime. The next phase of the investigation would prove to be crucial in solving the case. Andrew Allen Cook, a 22-year-old resident of Macon, Georgia, emerged as the prime suspect in the case. Cook was born and raised in Macon. His father, John Cook, was a respected FBI agent with nearly 3 decades of service. Despite his father's law enforcement background, Andrew had a history of minor run-ins with the law. He was known to be a loner and had difficulty holding down a job. In a shocking turn of events, Cook confessed to his father that he had committed the murders. He claimed that he had an argument with Grant at the lake, which escalated to the point where he shot both Grant and Michele. His father, torn between his duty as an FBI agent and his love for his son, reported the confession to the authorities. The evidence against Cook was compelling. The bullet casings found at the crime scene matched the AR-15 rifle and Ruger pistol that Cook had sold after the murders. His car, which he had also sold, matched the description of a vehicle seen near the crime scene. Most damning of all, the DNA from the saliva found on Michele's body matched Cook's DNA. With the confession and the mounting evidence, the case against Andrew Allen Cook seemed solid. However, the legal process had to run its course. The trial of Andrew Allen Cook began in 1998, 3 years after the murders of Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena. The courtroom was filled with tension as the families of the victims and the defendant awaited justice. The prosecution presented a strong case against Cook. They laid out the timeline of events leading up to the murders, presented the physical evidence, including the bullet casings and DNA match, and recounted Cook's confession to his father. The most damning piece of evidence was the DNA match between the saliva found on Michele's body and Cook's DNA, which was a relatively new form of evidence at the time. Cook's defense team attempted to cast doubt on the evidence. They questioned the reliability of the DNA evidence and suggested that the confession to his father was coerced. They also pointed out that Cook had no motive to kill Grant and Michele, as he did not know them. Despite the defense's efforts, the jury found Cook guilty of the murders of Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his confession to his father was particularly damning. Cook was sentenced to death, a decision that brought a measure of closure to the families of the victims. The murders of Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena left a deep scar on their families and the community. The senseless violence of their deaths was a stark reminder of the fragility of life. Their families had to grapple with the loss of their loved ones, while the community was left in shock and fear until Cook was apprehended and convicted. Andrew Allen Cook was executed on February 22, 2013, 18 years after the murders. His final words were a mix of remorse and despair. He said, "I'm sorry. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I can't even do it myself." He thanked his family for their support and for being with him. The execution brought a sense of finality to the case, but it was a grim reminder of the tragic events that had unfolded. The case of Grant Hendrickson and Michele Cartagena is a tragic tale of lives cut short and a community shaken by violence. It serves as a reminder of the importance of justice and the enduring impact of such crimes on families and communities. The case also highlighted the role of emerging forensic techniques, such as DNA analysis, in solving crimes. As we remember Grant and Michele, we also reflect on the ways in which their tragic deaths have shaped the pursuit of justice and the importance of supporting the families and communities affected by such devastating events.